Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Casterabas. My name is Christian Corley, and today I'm joined by Brian Terranova and James McLean. And we've got a nice little topic sorted out. I think a few weeks ago we discussed, James and I, the difference between when Doctor Who, you have that thing where some of it's on film and some of it's on video. And for the vast majority of classic Doctor Who, film didn't necessarily mean outdoors, but it almost certainly meant special effects. So video special effects were also used, and there's a whole mix and match and hodgepodge thing to it. So we're kind of coming at it from that kind of angle, aren't we, Brian?
Yes. And sometimes it's like like special effects, they've done one, it's great, what it is, or it's bad, whatever. And sometimes they throw a special effect at you that you just didn't even realize they were doing it. It's years later until somebody's like, oh, by the way, I figured out how they did this. And I think that's kind of like the key thing to kind of like chat about, which ones really grabbed us, which ones maybe didn't work, and which ones surprised you that there was something there, right? Because some
I,
episodes have something that you're just like, for such a simple shot, why did they do this, right?
Yeah.
I remember an old episode of Blue Peter back in the 80s, and it was one of those where they were talking about the TARDIS. And again, I'm sure this is a proper memory. I remember them saying at one point, and it's a closely guarded secret how they do this, the TARDIS materialization effect. And now that seems like a ludicrous thing to think that people would not understand, especially because I'm not even sure, I'm sure it's still a lock camera at that point as well, pretty much most times. And yet that was considered like a secret. So it's
Oh.
What gets me about that too is, for the secret that it is, I mean, like, obviously we know it's just a crossfade now, but maybe it was high technology then. But when they point it out, have you watched any like materialization shots and like actually realize what's going on? Because if we were to do one right now, you'd lock off the camera, you'd put the TARDIS in or take it out, one or the other, crossfade your shots, and it would look like the only item arriving is the police box. But in most of those 60s fading shots, like tree branches move or like other things in the
Mm.
shot move, like they literally are blending two shots together that maybe don't always perfectly line up.
mm,
And like, we just never really questioned it. It did
I
just work.
I did this is something I've never really spoken about my time at college. I did a TV and video communications sitting guild, or TV and video sitting guilds in the mid 90s while I was collecting my well, I was also working on an A level in film studies. And so we got to play around with a lot of VHS-C cameras, and they had these things built into them. They had basically, I think the BBC called it roll back and mix for the procedure of doing
Yes,
the
that's right.
TARDIS
Yes.
materialization. Yeah, this was this feature was basically built into a camera by this point. So you would start recording, then you would press a button, and it would just hold it, and then you'd do something, and then you'd press the button again, and it would continue, and it would automatically mix the two things for you. So I don't really mention that for any particular reason other than the fact that the technology became so kind of like
mm.
well used, because it was well used, wasn't it? It wasn't just Doctor Who that was using materialization, dematerialization. All sorts of TV shows were doing it. Not, I mean, Tomorrow's World would do it. There'd always be a Doctor Who joke about something, but there'd be so many things that were using it, so it became so like commonplace. And I'm only talking UK TV. It's just a commonplace feature, so it's kind of an influential feature.
Yeah.
And
I
such a
mean,
civil effect too,
mm.
Sorry, you were going to say?
I was just thinking like with Blake Seven's teleport, where they used to actually have to draw on every frame, and you could
Yeah.
see where, and then obviously you're still doing the same thing. Um, but again, I mean, I've always said this issue with CGI is, and I know CGI nowadays, an issue of CGI has kind of fallen back to the conversation about AI, but the issue with CGI is that when it gets to a point where you can't see how it's done, apart from the fact it's CGI, that's where I think it becomes frustrating. And the beautiful thing about the effects of like classic Doctor Who is that even at the time, I remember you kind of knew how things were done, but you were enjoying that sort of almost that sort of conversation of understanding how it's doing it. Oh, I quite like how they did that there. I know that's a model. I know it's a model. I can see the overlay there. I can
Yeah.
see a bit of the line. But when you get to CSO and I think sorry CGI, And I remember in the 90s, I might have mentioned this before with Christian, I think it was the X-Files movie, where there was a shot near the end where, again, rather than using a map now, they just built the rest of the wide shot with CG. I think it was the flying saucer at the end, just thinking of Brian's I Want to Believe poster in the background there. And it was flawless. It was seamless, really, and you wouldn't really notice it. And the thing, as soon as it becomes you don't notice it or you can't understand it, it becomes less interesting. So I think this is why this has so much more engagement, because you did at the time, and those sort of young people listening to this probably think, oh, they had no idea how it was being done. They didn't realize that they were two yogurt pots attached to string, and the camera was moving and the object was static. Yeah, we knew that. Most of us kind of knew it, but it was about enjoying seeing how they were working with what they had.
Yeah. And also you would see like people like in terms of whilst we talk about models, you would see people like Matt Irving on Swap Shop or Saturday Superstore, and he'd be demonstrating the construction of a spaceship using, like household stuff, bric-a-brac, bottles, spraying it silver, putting little bits on it. And I think there's a word for that. Is it kibble?
Yeah.
Kibble? Kibble?
Greeblies.
Greebles, yeah.
Greebles.
Greebles, yeah,
Any of
Greebles,
these
yeah.
words that meaning smashed up bits of tiny stuff that you stick on a model to make it look like a real scale thing.
Yeah.
We could watch these guys doing this, so we knew what it was, but it was being presented in a way that looked amazing. And maybe there's an element of that that made us think, actually, I could do this if I want. If I wanted to do this, I could do it. I could make this. This is
Yeah, that's
something I could make.
Yeah. At the same time, too, it also feels real, right? And I don't want to bash CGI. There's some very good CGI in some films that is pretty astounding what they were able to do with it. But what I like about the practical effects is it may be a person in a rubber suit, but they look exactly like the people around them. The lighting matches, everything's right. They don't look wonky at all, outside of being a person in a rubber suit. They are there. They are real. And that was one thing my friends and I, whenever we were watching the show back in like the 90s, I guess is when my friends and I would have watched together. Unlike Star Trek, for example, every time there was an alien shown, it wasn't just a human with a nose or a forehead or some big ears, and it was they Doctor Who went out of its way to make these big rubber alien suits or these big like crinoid monsters or whatever that you can think of. And we just thought like, yeah, okay, some of it may be cheesy or corny, or maybe some of it didn't work as well as another, but they dared to be different and actually show us what aliens, like a range of what aliens could be like, rather than just every alien is a humanoid with a different nose, and not to rag on
That's
Star Trek.
basically humans.
Well, yeah, right, you're right. Exactly. You guys know I like Star Trek. I think you like Star Trek. And I know a lot of the audience do. I like Star Trek, so I'm not ragging on it. It's just, it was so much more interesting to watch Doctor Who for that reason alone. Every week you would get something, you're like, what the heck are we going to get this? We had potato monsters last time, like, what are we getting now? And that's another thing. I mean, like, the logistics of building that guy up to be a Sontaran, to have that gigantic head and neck, and it informed the character from there, And yeah, that one could be more of a Star Trek alien because all they did was give the guy a big neck and head, right? But it's not. I mean, it's just, those are the things that fascinated me. The fact that they did them for real. Again, they didn't kind of fake their way around it. That always stood out. I do have a question because James brought up Blake Seven, and I have not seen it.
Really?
But I haven't seen it. It's believe it or not, it wasn't on PBS to my knowledge, so I never came by it. And after all these years of people talking about it, I never really tried to look into it myself.
Okay, there's a podcast series just suggested itself.
Oh, there we go. But the reason I'm bringing it up is, do we know if Blake Seven was re-released with new VFX at all, or no?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and
sort of, yes. Sort of.
Because the reason I ask is there's one clip that stood out to me. I don't know any of the characters, unfortunately, but there was this like kind of perspex box, just on the desk.
Orac,
yeah. Okay, you know that?
Yes.
Did you? All right. And
yes.
One of the scientists was going to use this laser to cut into it. And when I saw this laser beam come out, I went, whoa, hold on. What? I'm like, that is some pretty solid lasering effect. I only saw it on a clip on Twitter real quick, so I don't know much more than it. It was like it was a male and a female together, and they were just like, "Should we do this?" And he's like, "We have no choice," and he kind of like goes in with it.
I know it's not Orac, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the laser effect just blew me away. I was like, this, and I looked it up and I was like, when was this show made? And it was like kind of parallel for a little bit with Doctor Who there. And I just thought, how were they doing this effect then? And Doctor Who's lasers were still being drawn on in like cartoon format kind of thing almost. But I
Did
don't know if that was an updated effect that I saw or if that's literally how it aired.
Well, they've done a very recent release, and did they do updated effects on the recent release,
I
Christian? You seem
think
to.
there's I think there's some updated effects on the recent release. Yeah,
So
I'm looking at it now. I have it, but because it's stuff I've already seen, and I haven't really had a chance to look at the extras. So, but yes, it has got updated special effects.
so it could be that,
Okay.
but I mean,
So
yeah.
it could be
Yeah,
that.
so they kind of took a Star Trek original series approach to it, but at the same time, it's not as easy to do because it's shot on video. So
But
they've
something
been quite careful with it, I think.
something I thought what Brian was saying, which has just had me thinking, is that you have in the 90s, which happened across the board and became a sort of own genre joke, was, as you say, the little rubber bit on a piece of nose
Yeah.
would connote that they were some sort of alien. And I think that's a really interesting thing because it's like, is it by the 90s? Is there a level of like, I can't work out whether it's like a sophistication where we're sort of like, we don't have to make big buggy aliens because just by putting something on the nose informs the audience that this is an alien, and they don't really need much more than that because ultimately it's a
Yeah.
play about with humans and they know that. So let's pretend, let's not get through the pretense. Let's do it like that. Or is it the sense that they know their audiences are so more critical and expectant that they don't dare do anything like Azabi because they know it could crash their story with people's expectation. And
Yeah.
if that's the case,
Yeah.
does it mean that sort of like in the 60s and 70s especially, did Doctor Who almost have an easier sense of like, because it didn't have that audience scrutiny, it allowed them to take risks, which by the 90s you were no longer allowed to take, I guess is my question.
I mean that's fair because '60s Star Trek obviously had aliens like that. Thinking of the Gorn, for example, right? They did old Doctor Who style aliens,
Yeah.
but I think there's an argument to be made for the fact that actors like to work with other actors. They like to see their face, to read their face, to understand what
Yeah.
they're acting against,
Yeah.
and to inform their acting choices and so on. And it probably is easier also for the audience to relate if they see this human face that they already know, rather than um, there's episodes of old Doctor Who that I struggle to relate to, and the odd thing is this is an episode that would work perfectly in Star Trek, to be frank, which is the Paladin stories.
Oh yeah.
It's just people in wigs and so on. And you'd think because they're more humanized, I would be relating with them more. But for some reason, every time I go to watch those ones, I struggle to watch those ones. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just because I don't really care for the world they set up. Because I mean, again, it is just wigs and so on.
Mm.
But I don't
Wigs and
know. Those
miners.
don't. Was that
Wigs and miners.
wigs and miners? Yeah. But I don't know. It's an interesting thought because you'd think if they weren't afraid to take the chance, you would see some kind of like big bug-eyed monsters every once in a while as they were trying to take that chance. And even though I had just recently rewatched The Next Generation recently, I can't remember any episode that kind of stepped outside of the person in a mask or a prosthetic norm. Outside of
Skin of Evil.
season one. What's that?
Skin
Is
of
that where you're
Evil.
going? Season one when
I think,
Natasha Yar
yeah.
dies? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's Skin of
Exactly,
Evil.
exactly
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that worked. That was great. I mean,
But
even though a lot of people aren't happy with that episode, I thought that creature was cool.
but that's, I suppose, the part of it is that by that point Star Trek was being considered. I think by the 90s there's an element of television where television is still slightly embarrassed by science fiction. And Star Trek was very much orientated as a dramatic show, I think, as much as a science fiction show. So you're trying to appeal to audiences who perhaps wouldn't get past the bug-eyed stuff and had to be
Yeah.
limited to. I suppose we're going off point of where you guys,
Yeah.
where
Well, I'll tell
especially
you what,
Brian
I've
wanted
had
to
an
go.
idea. I've had an
Yeah.
idea, okay. So
Okay.
let's work towards a point where we all share what we think to be the worst special effects in Doctor Who, and maybe pair that with the best special effects in Doctor Who. Well, before we get there,
Right.
there's an interesting debate which I stumbled into on Twitter X, whatever, a few days ago
It's still so
concerning.
wild
I
that we
know, yeah.
don't have a name for that. It's like it's almost like a running joke. It feels like a Dan Harmon show where they still haven't actually decided what its name is after 10 seasons. But anyway,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, uh, concerning CSO chroma key and the
Yep.
various colors that were used.
Mhm.
So I think it's Death to the Daleks. I think used yellow CSO for the City of the Excellence, for example, which I think you can see in More Than 30 Years in the TARDIS. Usually Doctor Who use blue or green or yellow CSO, and then they stop using yellow and move more towards blue or green or whatever. So that's just like a nice little starting off point, because the whole thing about CSO is that there is a color that you can't use because that color is the important color where the special effects are going to come in, isn't it? And with over the years, and every TV network's done this. Some poor guy reading the news has ended up with, like a report on his chest or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and we still use the same technology now, but it's far more kind of it's refined to such a point where you don't even need the color really. So Doctor Who relied on that a lot for video effects as opposed to film effects. And I'm, I like the fact James and I talked about this a few weeks ago as well on the Silver Nemesis, because you can see there's almost like a line of progression of how well Doctor Who did CSO between, say, those Barry Letts directed episodes and Silver Nemesis, where you've got the Cybermen coming out of that gate, that doorway of the spaceship that they've just landed in. It's almost seamless. It's such a good thing, and yet, I mean, there's 15 years between those episodes or something, so it feels like kind of a slow progression, doesn't it?
Yeah, and okay, so is that genuinely a slow progression for Doctor Who, or was that
Well,
budgetarily a slow progression
yeah,
because
that's the thing,
they
isn't
weren't
it? Yeah.
giving the show and what it could money that it could actually do something with,
Well,
right?
slap in the middle of that, you've got Star Wars, haven't you? And I think
Right.
that's a big, that's a big kind of like that draws a lot of attention, because then as soon as Star Wars has been taken over the cinema, everyone's looking at that, seeing spaceships done in that. Doctor Who's trying to do better spaceships, better models. You've got the Trial of the Time Lord opening, that stands up to that,
But
but
is it
it's the
but
only
is it
bit
with
of it that
CS
does.
is it with
But
CSO though less to do with the technology but more the application? Because I think a lot of the
well, yeah.
mistakes Doctor Who always made was the CSO was used to key people. Well, when you get
Mm.
to sort of later, so it was the McCoy era. In my memory, I can't think of any circumstances where it was being used where people, so you are having to actually kind of be aware of the limitations of the soft edges. So if you're doing like a doorway or a frame and then you're sort of overlaying around that, that's fairly, I imagine, straightforward. But
Oh my God, you just made me remember the worst effect I'm going to say. Sorry, go
okay,
on.
well then that's been worse. Well, that's it. So I'm just wondering whether it's actual less to do with the actual technology, although the technology did get better, but also like what you're using it for. And I think even by the 90s, you can still see some pretty shoddy early stuff where people are used. When people are used, you can well even now you can see it with. It's still pretty hard to light properly with people to a point where okay, you've not got the fuzziness that you get with old chroma key, but it's
Yeah.
still a difficult one.
In any of the films that I've made, the biggest thing for the VFX artist is you have to light it properly. You have to have the green or the blue screen far enough away, but you have to light that independently of your actors so that everything can be seamless. And when you do that right, I mean, some of the stuff my guy has done, just even in the test where he's like, look, this is what we can really do. You're blown away by it. You actually think you're actually on this set when you knew you were standing in front of a green screen. And yet at the same time, I posted a video, I think it was to my Instagram from one of the film sets I was on. And I just grabbed my phone and my phone that's disappeared. There it is. Um,
There you
I
go.
grabbed my
Exactly.
phone
Topical.
Yeah, and I did a video of myself just like walking through the set, just kind of making a joke. Oh, geez, we're at the end. What a rough day. I'm going to take a vacation, walking in front of the green screen where I had put the shore, the beach down, and it looked amazing. And I just shot it on my phone in regular whatever lighting that we had in the studio at the time in front of the green screen, and it was a perfect, like, I looked like I was at the shore. I remember I think my brother was like, how the hell did you do that? I'm like, that's just a green screen. Like, I even made the thing disappear and show that I was in a green screen as part of the joke. And it's funny to do that so seamlessly with the phone, and yet when you're trying to do it with the proper cameras, the proper lighting, and your actors in the scene, how poorly it can fail if you just don't do the right thing, because we have so many that do. And there are examples in Doctor Who of the same thing that did fail just because the technology was new. They were learning it. They weren't experts at it. Here we have a VFX guy who's like, I need you to do this, this, and this. If you don't do that, they're going to
Yeah.
fail. And when you don't, they truly do fail.
Because I
And then they
doubt,
try all sorts of tricks to fix it, but they fail too.
because I doubt in like Underworld they had any idea in terms of what the light, how to light that, knowing what was going to be overlaid on. There would be
Yeah.
no connection between those two processes. So you automatically just get that. But outside of the choppiness of the outside, as you say, the lighting's off. It
Yeah.
stands out a
Yeah.
mile, especially if
I
you're in a
think the
studio.
failure in Underworld, big time, because I'm an Underworld fan. I like Underworld. I know a lot of people don't, but I understand that the CSO is bad.
Oh
Um,
yeah, but there it's
the
an
fail,
ambition, isn't it? You can see the ambition. You can see what they're trying to do. There,
right?
there are low points in the script, and it probably is too long. But the fact that they're trying to do what they're doing with the special effects with the CSO, it's amazing
Yeah.
in that regard.
And where they kind of dropped the ball was one thing that I learned as a filmmaker, which was huge. If you have the resources, at least build the floor. This way, because the problem was the actors didn't have any shadows. Their feet,
Mm.
just, you could tell they weren't
Mm.
interacting with the real ground, or they didn't utilize it properly, right? Like, obviously it wouldn't have all worked great as medium and close-up shots, but the CSO would have worked much better if it was all medium and close-up shots, right? But instead they did full body and showing them like walking up to the cave wall, and that's where the failing was, because there was no actual genuine contact with the ground, like we were talking about earlier with bad and good CGI. So I think if Underworld had actually built a floor,
Mm.
things could have been much better for them. And it's funny because I remember watching a video for Underworld where they had told Tom, you can't go past this. Let's just call it a tennis ball. I forget what they had there, but you can't go past this tennis ball. Like, you're gonna walk up here. You're gonna make a left. Don't walk over the tennis ball. And then the next thing you see in the video is Tom explaining to the other actors, no, 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 you can't go past the tennis ball. If you go past the tennis ball, you're out of frame, and the effect won't work. We'll lose the effect. And it's like, he got it. He understood exactly what they were trying to do. And it just seems like everybody on set knew how to make it work, but not how to make it work flawlessly.
I suppose the one thing I like about Underworld, and it's one of the few things I do, is because they are using CSO to the point where, like you say, the ground as well is the same. You lose the shadows, but I think you get certain shots which have a depth which they wouldn't have been able to do
Hmm.
if it was a green screen with floor. I just don't think they could have matched it. You know what I mean? I think it
No,
allowed them to do
absolutely.
stuff that whenever we've else seen them do it with floor, it's always it's very flat and locked. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, this was all locked, but there was a sort of like a depth to some of the attempts that they made, which didn't
No,
work,
that's a
but
good point. Yeah.
did freshen it up a bit. I don't mind Underworld's CSO effect, to be honest. They're not great, but like I said, because there's an ambition there, you can see what it adds to the story as much as what it takes away.
Yeah, rather than not even tell the story because, oh, we don't have a cave, let's move on. We got the story, thankfully, and I agree. I don't think it's horrible. I think there are a few, like, for example, like I said, if you did a medium shot, those generally look pretty good. Yeah, they're on CSO, you can tell, but they don't look like they failed, right? But the ambitious shots, like you're talking about, where they're running up to the cave wall, I don't blame them for trying it, but that's where you can definitely tell they're running
Yeah.
over an overlaid photo. There is a shot in I think it's episode 1 of Underworld where when they're in the spaceship, the minion, is that right? Spaceship, and
Yeah.
they have the windows in the background that were previously playing like asteroids and so on the green screen, but there's a shot in there where they're just green. they didn't overlay any
Yeah.
special effect in there.
Mm.
And it always gets me whenever I watch it. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot that that's there. Like, I wonder, didn't, I don't have the Blu-ray sets or anything, so I don't know if they actually completed that for that one. Matter of fact, did they do anything for that episode? That would have been a prime episode to try and
I don't
fix.
think they did.
No, I don't
That's a
think I did
shame.
either.
No,
was just
Everybody
I've got.
complains about that episode. You'd think that would be like, let's special
let's
edition
fix
this
it.
one.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Yeah.
just thinking about Tom Baker there, because you mentioned Tom Baker, of course, and he's kind of he's there when, as the Doctor, when there's all this the improvement in video effects happens to such an extent that you've also like his final, well, not his final. I think it's like his penultimate but one serial has some of the heaviest Warriors Gate,
Oh,
and I think Tom Baker has quite a. I think he quite likes special effects, because he's obviously
Oh yeah.
in that Harryhausen movie before Doctor Who. I think it's the
Oh
Sinbad
right.
one.
yeah,
There's Doctor Who, and then there's
Seven
Randall
Seas. Yeah,
Hopkirk Deceased, in which there's a lot. I mean, he's basically in a green room most of that. Green, not a green room, but a green decorated or a blue decorated room. There's CGI all over him in Randall Hopkirk Deceased. You only see him interacting with anyone other than Vic Reeves in one episode. So I think Tom Baker quite likes the special effects. Um,
I think
so,
he likes being on a set in general. I think that's one
well,
of the
yeah, yeah.
joys about him. You know what I
But
mean?
the thing is,
I
the thing
truly
about
do.
Tom is that we always identify him as being like he seems to be the actor who likes having a very good actor opposite him the most. He tends to rise to that most. So you've the actress in I want to say Stones of Blood, the older lady. Is that
Oh
the Stones
yeah,
of
oh
yeah,
Blood?
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
All those types of people. He really, really plays well with
yeah.
these kind of like esteemed actors that he knows.
Mm.
And yet he likes the special effects as well.
Speaking of, are
Yes,
we gonna who's gonna get us started on the worst? Their
I
worst.
will. I will, because this is
Go
something
for
that's
it.
come up again recently on that website that doesn't have a name. And that is the Revenge of the Cybermen crash landing.
Of the space
Mm.
station?
The space station.
The visit to
Mm.
the visit to
The
the
planet
carpet
on the
showroom.
wheel.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
visit to the carpet showroom, basically. Where all the carpets are all lined up and it's spinning the carpet, shiny, and moving the camera towards the carpet. Yeah, I think that is the worst. I think it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible because it can only be about that big in diameter
Yeah.
for us to see. It just spins far too much. I mean, you all know it spins far too much. It just breaks any sense of belief about what's happening at that moment. Yeah, so that has got to be the worst for me.
All
No,
the
not the
episodes
worst for
that
me.
Doctor Who has gone to quarries and nobody thought, let's just get a camera and run across the quarry and
Exactly.
just film that. Instead, let's just make a planet on a
Yeah,
Krang.
yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
mind
Sorry,
that.
James.
I thought it worked. I mean, it's an asteroid as
Yeah.
well, so it's not a planet.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, yeah.
tiny
No, it's not
asteroid.
gigantic. Yeah.
It's not
I
gigantic. It's
give you that.
going very fast. It never took me out. I mean, again, we can see, like you said, we can see
Yeah,
exactly how it's done, and then we can judge
Yeah.
it on that basis. And
Yeah.
I know, and I think this is the difference, is that now if you're into effects, if you're into CG, you can know how a lot of this stuff is done, and there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. There's lots of great people. I mean, I still think the Corridor Crew do some really interesting stuff and exploring that. But the
Yeah.
layman could sort of see that that's not a planet and they could guess how that effect was done and you can judge it accordingly.
That's no
I,
moon.
I think far worse than that, going from the same era, is majority of robot. I think the
ugh.
overlay of the robot is it just takes
Yeah,
me
Well,
that
out.
didn't work.
it
Yeah.
could be described as crimes against chroma key, couldn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
absolutely terrible. And I know it was the only way they could really do it, but everything from the false Sarah Jane to just it sort of bouncing around, it just not having any size or scale to it when it
Yeah.
grows. That to me has got to be one of the worst, and far worse than the one which most people go for. Well, no, I'm not going to say it because Brian might say it yet.
We'll
Um,
see. We'll see. But yeah, no, it's a good point with Robot because it goes back to what we were saying with the green screen and how you have to light it and work with it properly. And one of the hardest things with green screen or color separation overlay is shiny objects that will reflect that same
yes,
color.
Yeah,
And
yes,
yeah,
Robot
yeah,
was a very poor choice for that. But how else were you going to do that story, right?
yeah.
Again, you had to do it that way.
The thing
Sort
with
of, I
robot
guess there are other options. Go on.
is those episodes with the siege robots. They there's maybe a feeling that maybe the budget's run out a little bit for special effects, so we've got the Action Man tank as well, haven't we? So
You know what? I don't mind the Action Man. I never like, not that I had any idea what the Action Man tank was, because we obviously didn't have that here. If it was a GI Joe tank, I might have
sure.
noticed it, but I don't think it doesn't work, if that makes sense, right? Yeah, it's not a perfect fix, but I always just thought it was a model, I guess, probably is what it came to. I never knew it was a toy, but I don't think it sells that badly, personally, the tank.
Fair enough.
That's me.
So anyway, so
Um,
we're on to your worst then.
My worst. Let's see if it's what James predicted. But my worst is one that I always just sit there and I go, but why? Like literally, but
So
why?
it's not the one I'm thinking of then. So I'm
All
interested to know
right.
what it's going to be.
It is Terror of the Autons. The
Okay.
father of the factory, the guy, the son who runs the factory, the father has come home with the doll that kills him, and the wife reacts, and she's in the kitchen, which is a CSO kitchen. And I just think, was there not a kitchen available for you to shoot this one shot with this woman? There was not one of you had a home that said, let's just go to my home. Let's film you right there in my kitchen. No, don't worry. We'll just do this on a yellow screen in your kitchen. Like, why would they do that? It takes me out of it. Like you said with Robot, it takes me out of it every time, because it's like, oh no, this man, he just, what is going on there? Do
I
they
mean,
live in a green screen home? What is happening?
there could be some fair reasons for that. It could be that they did shoot and it went bad and they got it back and it's like, we have to redo
It's a
this. We don't
pickup.
have the money, so we pick it up.
Yeah,
We yeah, and we do it on a green screen. Or it could be that they realized they needed to insert something which wasn't already there and they didn't have the money. So as you say, pick up again,
sure.
green screen. But either way, as an audience, you're not there to quibble over whys. You're just quibbling over what the
Yeah.
hell am I watching?
But even still, again, as a pickup, was it really more cost effective to get somebody in front of a green screen than
Yeah.
just to say, look, I live 10
Mm.
minutes away. Let's just use my kitchen.
Oh, there's a
You know what I
canteen
mean?
downstairs.
Well, I was
Right.
going to
There's
say
some,
that would be
Yeah, in the last podcast or a recent podcast, James and I were talking about various things, and one of the things I mentioned was Clayton Hickman had done some restoration work on the photo caption backdrops from Inferno outside the Doctor's garage. And one of the comments, someone almost the first comment was, "Could you do the ones from Terror of the Autons?" Which I thought would be brilliant, just to see how good that kitchen could be.
yeah. I would love this. And that's what I'm saying. That's what these special editions should be about. I'll put it this way. Star Wars, the special editions, we all like kind of either love them, rag on them, whichever, or there's things you love, things you don't like. One of the things that I love is that they removed the matte boxes from the spaceships. In all the space
Yes.
scenes, you could see those matte
Yes.
boxes going around. That is a fix that I don't think anybody would ever complain that it got
No.
fixed. It's just making what was there be what it should have been in the first
Yeah.
place. If you put that woman in a proper kitchen, if you had put Tom Baker in a proper cave, right? If you made the
It's
robot
sexist,
look as
right?
solid as it should be, right? Like, who's going to complain about that, right? One of the great special effects when they do the special editions, without fail, 100%, and it goes across the board for this, but I'm going to name it specifically, as K9's laser blast.
Okay.
They always fix that. K9 has these weird wide laser blasts, or they're
Weird
just
flat.
this red kind of
Yeah.
whatever, but they make them look like this perfect laser beam that has heat and wave. It looks so good. It's just a shame that they put so many other CGI things in there, because unfortunately, and let's go back to, since we're talking special effects, the Ark in Space and Revenge of the Cybermen special editions that were released on DVD, they're virtually unwatchable now, because the CGI looks like video game CGI. It doesn't, it's not like we're talking like Avatar, and I'm not even a fan of Avatar, but people talk about that as like the pinnacle of CGI, right? The same thing happened with Star Wars Special Edition. The CGI effects did not age well, especially when it was a creature rather than a building. But even, look at the Tatooine scenes, the sand underneath everything, it just did not age well. And that's why I always think practical is better, because inevitably somebody would have had a sandy floor, and that's always going to be more believable than a CGI set. So fixing those laser blasts, fixing the space scenes, maybe cleaning up some CSO, those things would go a million miles toward making a lot of these episodes more watchable for someone who's a little cautious about dipping their
Yeah.
toes in the water.
So just out quickly out a query. I'm thinking about what hasn't aged well. I would argue for the Five Doctors special edition, the original Black Triangle works better than the
I
swirly
agree.
thing for
Yeah,
a
I agree.
similar reason, because even though it's far more basic, somehow its basicness makes it feel far more almost believable because
And
it's
interesting.
and interesting. Yes.
Yeah. But it is a bit Superman, right?
Hmm.
It is a bit, yeah, I was thinking
It,
the same thing. Yeah, yeah.
it is a bit in that, but at the same time, that's what's interesting about it. Like when they made it be that swirl effect, and later on, I forget what they did for the other special edition, but it doesn't have that same effect. Somehow catching them in this two-dimensional object, I believe that. It worked. It sold. I didn't need
Yeah.
that to be changed. Now, some of the transitions that they did with the new effect coming down and capturing, like cleaning them up, those were some of those were better, and that's what I was talking about with cleaning things up. But the effect is much better. The old one is much better. Absolutely. Should we move
So
into the good effects? Oh, what were we going to say?
I was just going to say, I just feel like it feels like this is such a big topic. There's so many effects we could talk about. But yeah, I think you're right. Maybe we should go to good effects. I've got one in my
Well,
head.
we can hit so many different types somewhere in between. I have one I'm going to choose as my favorite, but I think it's one that just blew me away more recently, which is why I'm going there. So this doesn't have to be your absolute pinnacle favorite, I suppose, right? So you want to start, Christian? You want to start us off again?
Yeah, go on then. My favorite. I'm just going to sound like a stuck record, but it's well, if we're talking model work
I know where you're going.
and Lord opening.
Yeah, time
Have I
you did
frozen?
freeze. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for
You
Christ's
froze
sake.
very briefly at
Oh,
just before half past as well, just if you want a time code.
did I?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Because I've
Oh,
Oh, this is like a
this
bad
is
temple effect, like you'd
yeah. I
see
was going to say
in City of Death or something. He's
this is
frozen
my
in
favorite
time.
special effect. Oh my goodness. I really thought he was going to unstick by now. Either that or he's just standing
Yeah.
still waiting for us to laugh.
No, no. This is a regular thing. Our tech guru has massive tech issues, which feels like a typical drama position for your central character. You know, one who is good at the thing, but is also a victim of the thing as well.
Yeah. Oh, wait, he moved again. Is
He's
he back?
moved. He's well, he says,
Oh, we're
wait a
getting.
moment, his sound's off. No, he
Speaking of
thinks everything's
sound,
okay. Yep.
um, I know you guys said I sound okay, but do you hear a fan running?
No.
Perfect. My computer, I'm on the market for getting a new computer soon. I'm just waiting for this new job to pay off a little bit more. But my computer, whenever it starts to crunch something heavy, the fans really want to like go. It never really did that before, and Apple tells me it's fine, it's normal. Makes a lot of sense. I'm using half of my storage capacity on the computer, and my memory probably isn't offsetting that, I suppose. Plus all the AI features that's built into everything, that takes so much. So I'm hoping my work gave me a new computer, and it's a MacBook, and it's whisper quiet. So I'm hoping whatever new computer I get is the same, and we won't have this issue in the future.
Yeah,
But
I
I just
do
wanted to
this.
make sure you couldn't hear it.
No, I get that. So I do this on my work MacBook rather than my computer, 'cause it's a similar fan issue.
Hey, you know what? That's smart. I probably should have done that myself. Oh well, maybe next time. Anywho, what effect? Oh, maybe we should save it. But I was going to say, what effect did you think I was going to say for the worst?
I was wondering whether you're going to go Invasion of the Dinosaurs.
No, do you know what? I love Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Now they are bad. I'll grant you, they're not. They're not. I'm anxiously awaiting this to be released on Blu-ray, primarily because I want episode one to have an updated colorization. And I think that will look good. My concern is that they're going to over AI process it the way they did with season 21. But I'm very curious to see, because you know it's going to get the special edition treatment. I'm very curious to see what they'll do with the dinosaurs and if they immediately look dated or if they look good. But I love Invasion of the Dinosaurs. I watch that one a lot. I really like that story. I don't care how cheesy those dinosaurs are. That story has such a great vibe, you know. And watching episode one, as you know, which is just called Invasion, when it was only in black and white, somehow added to the effect of
Yeah,
the story too. It
yeah,
has a different name. It's in black and
yeah.
white, and then you get into the rest of the story. So I desperately wanted to be in color, but I have this relationship with the way it currently is, you know, and it's a little difficult. So I see why you chose that, why you think I would choose that one, but I love that story too much. And I think that's kind of a key thing, right? Like, how much does a bad effect play into your perception of the story,
Mhm.
right? Because while those are not great dinosaurs, I love that story. While there's plenty in the 80s where I can say, ooh, geez, that's not really some good effects there. I might not revisit this one, you know, or the Paladin people. Anyway, it's my 2 cents on
Are
that.
you back,
Okay.
Christian? Yeah.
Yep. So you, it's time to decide reveal my favorite special effects in classic Doctor Who, and it's really tough, isn't it? Because there's the obvious one. And I know I've said this before. The model work at the beginning of Trial of a Time Lord is obviously unsurpassable, so that stands to reason. But if we're talking like just video effects, then I think I would. I don't know. I think I probably need to go for something that really works on an emotional level, in which case that's probably going to be the Fifth Doctor's regeneration. I think
Oh,
in terms of it does a lot. It does it without any sort of morph effect, or there's no rollback and mix in that regeneration. You've got all that strobing, which isn't the right term for it, but you got that thing that comes in. I don't know. It's like driving through a blizzard almost. But I think that
yeah.
is probably the best piece of video-based special effects in classic Doctor Who. Yeah.
That's a good one.
What?
That's a good one.
What?
I didn't expect that one at all. That's a good one.
Oh, I didn't expect that one. And it's a classic example of where uh, tech issues can really fuck your day. Christian had a tech issue, and before the tech issue occurred, he'd sort of said Trial of Time Lord, which is fine because my one was going to be the Fifth Doctor regeneration.
Get out.
No.
Come on.
So
Was it?
I'm kind of annoyed, yeah, because I think it's not what I think works with it, and it's kind of what Christian caught as well. And it's a bit like going back to Star Trek with the phasers. In the later series, they kind of worked out you don't have to draw a phaser line on. You can just have a white splash, and then
Mm,
the person fall down, and you've made the effect without having to do the tedious, awkward
Yeah.
line draw. And in a sense, that is what that one does. It has lots of effects, and it just affects to white, and then cuts back to the actor, and he's a different actor, and it just works so well. That transition is really powerful. But when he said that, I was aware that he'd screwed me over royally. I thought, fine, you orchestrated your own little tech problem so you could go and steal what I was going to say.
yeah, that's right. I drove down, popped in there whilst everything was frozen, and extracted it from my brain, then came back here.
Sounds plausible.
Do you want to go with a second favorite, or do you
Yeah,
want
I
me to
do.
go? Okay.
It's always a backup, and it's always
Yeah,
a
yeah.
good backup in case someone's taken my mediocre first
Go on
idea.
then. What's your good backup?
My good backup is one where the effect is really pathetically simple, but I think is so damn powerful, and that's got to be Rastan Mori Robot from the Five Doctors.
Ah,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just,
Yeah, because that was,
and
yeah,
it's a really simple effect, and it works so
rolled
well. I think
well.
as a kid, it's kind of frightening because it just goes. There's
yeah,
no sense of, and that makes it feel more real. I think also the direction of the acting. So when they would cut him back would be when he's dropping to the floor again. So they would get him to jump, obviously, and so he'd just suddenly appear, but he'd be appear and then hitting the ground. So
yeah,
suddenly he would have gravity and reality as well to him. It
Yeah.
was just, and not just that. I think the music for that is really works well with him through that whole sequence of the Cyberman massacre. But then also, and again, this isn't a visual effect, but I think also his arrows and how they fire and how they move and how they hit again is just so perfectly done in terms of the cut. So again, I have to be fair with that. It's less about visual effects; it's about the lack of visual effects and just good editing.
yeah. The
Um,
thing with the editing as well, and the effects and the editing together is it's almost like and I'm not trying to do this down, and I'm not sure if Brian's going to get this. It's almost like a goodies episode, but with the editing to turn it like the same set of the same techniques used. So like, like people moving, then cutting, then they're appearing somewhere else when it restarts off again. But it's done with the editing and obviously
Mm.
with the storyline and the outfit. It's done in such a dramatic and action focused way that it's something completely different.
I'll tell you what, I don't get the reference,
Okay.
but it is a great call out though, because it is sort of like two special effects that you're calling out there, right? You have what we kind of started this off with, which was the TARDIS dematerialization effect, the crossfade, overfade. It's similar to that, except it's similar to that in the respect that the creature does the same thing the TARDIS does, just does it quicker, right? If you were to do that effect today, I guarantee you, if they brought that character back today, they would probably do like a motion blur kind of thing. You'd see like a trail of it rather
Oh
than
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
have it blink. But the second effect you get is that arrow effect, that spear that it
Mm.
shoots out, because
Mm.
my memory of that is it just flawlessly flies right out of its hand.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
that's a really great effect. So
Mm.
those you've got two in one there. That's definitely a great call out. Um, and yeah, my friends and I were hooked on the Five Doctors for years, and that robot was one of the reasons. Obviously, all the doctors there together was great, but we would watch that one endlessly. Um,
And it's
yeah,
such
that's
a
a really
good
good one.
and it's such a good marriage of effect, or as I've said, lack of effect
Yeah,
with everything else. So even the small things like at the very end where it's just standing over that Cyberman and it just uses arrow spear just to knock its head off,
yeah,
as it's the
yeah.
last shot of it. There's just so many good things. The direction, the editing, the music, the acting, the body acting of the Cybermen as well as the Rastan is just brilliant. But you could arguably remove it for the lack of visual effect, depending on how we define visual effects. It's not,
Yeah.
there's nothing special added to it, but it's an effect created predominantly through editing and rhythm.
No, no, no. I think that's still a visual effect, because
Yeah,
in
yeah, I
the
think
in
so
the
too.
end, it's
Yeah,
it's a visual
you've got a
medium
visual
for us.
effect. Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Come on
I
then, Brian.
think. Oh my! I was just gonna say. I think one of the other things about that is it shows like what a creative mind can do, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we had Underworld, which we said was over ambitious, but at least they tried it, right? But here in the Five Doctors, rather than get over ambitious, they said, "Look, we can sell this just by doing this," and it was the right call, And there's many movies, many big budget movies that do the same thing. Do we have to go up here, or can we just do it here and make it work great? Mine is actually similar in that it works on a couple different visual effect techniques. And recently, before we started the call, Christian, James and I were talking a little bit, and I was telling him that I was watching The Demons recently, and there was a special effect in there that just absolutely stood out to me, and I'm going to call it out as my favorite because I was amazed by how it was done. It made me feel like it could be in the new series today or something else, and that's the heat
I
barrier
thought it
in the
might be. Yeah,
Demons.
yeah.
And there's a couple reasons for that. The one that actually blew me away was when they finally used the machine that built the hole in it, and I saw the hole, and I was like, I don't remember this being this good. Like it actually looks like this circular like heat. Uh, I don't know how to describe it. Like a heat barrier had been broken through, but it doesn't look like it's an overlaid. I'm watching the Three Doctors right now, and whenever one of the characters gets like blipped away into the antimatter world, it's the cheesiest effect, right? It really
Yeah, yeah,
is.
yeah.
This is the polar opposite of that. This looks like they spent money behind it, and it's probably, I don't know, what is it? It's probably just like Vaseline on a screen or something like that. I don't know. There's even a point when Osgood is like on the back of the Jeep and they're coming through, and he has to duck because he realizes, oh, I'm going to hit the barrier, and it's
Yeah, yeah.
perfectly lined up. So I don't know if they had something there that they put an effect over. I don't know what, but it worked perfectly. But that's the first point. The other 2 points are when the brigadier sticks his I don't know what you call that, the stick that he always carries
Ooh,
around. um
batteny thing. Yeah.
yeah, when he sticks it in the heat wave and they just make the end of it start to spark a flame. Now I get that's an old-fashioned special effects trick, but it works so well.
Yeah.
But more to that, there were two times. One, the brigadier picks up a rock, and I think the doctor did the same thing, picks up a rock and throws it at the barrier, and then it just poofs, it just blows up. Now, they had to have picked up something that the special effects people had rigged to blow up. So this actor's holding something that could realistically blow up in their hand, but it was all timed perfectly, you know. I keep seeing these clips on Twitter of a movie I've never seen before where, you know, this guy's trying to stop this fire truck, and the fire truck's like trying to get to the call that it's been put on. And the guy's trying to tell him to stop, and they finally stop the fire truck. A fireman gets out, he goes run up to the guy, and he smacks into this solid wall. Every time I see that clip, it reminds me of the Demons. I don't think of anything else because I've never seen anybody else do that. And then you see like later clips, like Doctor Who kind of, I don't know if they just rolled out a black tarp or if they just put fresh dirt down to make it look like that heat barrier had burnt the ground. I don't know. But that effect just like absolutely sold me as, I don't know how they did this back then. Right. And I think that's
you don't know how
what's
it did
amazing
it,
to me.
it also feels real, doesn't it?
Yes. That's the thing. It feels real.
Absolutely sells. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, we know the CSO work. We know how that little rock blew up. But how did they do that barrier? I'd love to know.
I would.
It looks so cool. Yeah. It really does.
That's a good show. That's a really good show. Wow. Well, wow. Well, I mean, where do we go from there?
Well,
I mean,
I think there could be some. We could do some. What do they call them? When you have ones that just hit below the top 10, honorary recommendations.
Honorable mention.
Okay.
Honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions. Yeah.
Because I was just thinking, it seems unfair to just be sitting on the 80s. We sat on the 80s, which is a time where maybe effects were getting better. But I was just thinking, going back to like the first and second, I'm thinking of something like the First Doctor. There's a couple of shots in the Daleks, Dead Planets, a few that they do throughout the era of them standing in front of. I think there's a shot of them on the cliff edge where they can see the city, which I think is actually a pretty solid thing for the time. I think that's one I would go for. And I was also thinking about some of the death effects, like the Ice Warrior cannon in most of in all the, which again we know how it's done, but was a very powerful effect, especially as a kid, because it was
simple
like,
but effective.
Yeah, it didn't make sense, and yet because it didn't make sense, it sort of made it feel even worse. Because it would then just cut back to the actor falling to the floor. So, you know, there was no sense of connection. But I think sometimes that makes it seem more scary than.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's great. It's great you went there because I was going to bring us back to the 60s as well. I know you guys already did a bit on the Daleks master plan. The episodes were covered, but I watched a video recently, which was, I forget what it was called. So I'm going to try and give you the base title so people can try and find it because I unfortunately don't have the link. Christian, maybe I'll send it to you later so you can put it with the video. But someone did a uncovering the lost special effect of Dalek's master plan, right? Something along those lines. And it was when it was in episode 3 when they crash land on the prison planet. There's a shot in there where somebody said, "Hey, you know how the studio floor is all laid out? You have the TARDIS set over here, you'll have the alien planet set over here, and then maybe the Kimball spaceship over here. So you can see them all. If you took a photo aerial view, you can see them all together, but the cameras are specifically positioned so that you won't see the other sets." Somebody made a comment, "Oh, is the police box there? Is the TARDIS there? I see this thing at the top of the screen. It looks like the square shape of the police box." Long story short, I'll ruin the video in a little bit, I guess, because you kind of have to for this part of the story. But they found out that it wasn't a police box. It was actually a reflection of one of the cameras, but like that wasn't in use, but sideways with a script on it, right? And it just gave this illusion of being that. And the reason that is because Douglas Camfield wanted to get a particular shot of the alien planet, and they had some fake trees on set. They had built a little bit of the set. But if you had gone too high, you would have seen the studio ceiling. So rather than punch in closer and not get the shot that he wanted, you know, but have a usable shot, they hired, and this astounded me because I thought they only did this in movies, say like Star Wars, things that had a big budget, which is actually going to lead me into the 1980s. By the way, I'll do an effect from the 1980s that I was shocked by in the same time. They hired someone to do a glass matte painting. And if you watch this shot, all they did was just build like some tree branches and a couple of leaves to kind of hide the fact that there was a bit of the set they didn't want you to see. And you can tell when the characters are kind of walking through the brush, like they're not interacting with what's in the front. They're kind of just perfectly moving. But I think there was something with how the light reflected. There was like one giveaway in the scene outside of that camera reflecting because it was a glass matte painting. But I was just like, this is the 60s. It's a
Yeah,
Doctor Who TV show shot on video, and they thought, let's have somebody paint a glass. I mean, those things take time,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And I was amazed by that, and amazed even more that these episodes were just uncovered and people already analyzed it enough to go, that's what this is, right? And not only that, but they let me know something that I've been curious about for years. And this is going to take us into the 80s, which is oh God, I'm losing the one with the pterodactyls. What's the name of that one?
Frontiers. No,
No.
Visitation.
Visitation. Thank you. Just wasn't there. When the spaceship is crashed and it's buried partially underground, and then the Doctor Tegan and so on, they walk in there. Well, that ship that we see, that's a glass matte painting. The doorway that they walk into is there, but the extension that we see is another glass matte painting. I never
Oh,
knew that either. It
no.
always just looked really cool to me. And I thought, oh, they actually built this
Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah,
thing that
yeah,
they're
yeah.
walking into. Again, to think that this show that usually shot multi-camera, now that one was on location. So I guess it makes a little bit more sense, while the other one was studio based. But those blew me away that Doctor Who ever actually used glass matte paintings. I had no idea that it did that.
I was watching a clip. I used to like buy books and watch all the extras and like all the documentaries about making Star Wars, and I still didn't know until very recently that the scene where Darth Vader lands on the Death Star in Return of the Jedi and is, or
Mm.
is it the Emperor who lands on Death Star? All those stormtroopers are not
Oh,
really
no,
there. They're
yeah.
tiny
Yeah.
little paintings. Yeah,
Mm.
Uh-huh.
and it's
It's amazing.
incredible what that no, it's not technology. That art is was capable of doing. And we
That
largely
indistinguishable.
associate it with big kind of like biblical epics, don't we? If we're going to
Yeah.
even thinking about it, but it's used so widely across everything.
Well, there's another one in the Visitation too. At the
Okay,
end, I think it's at the end when the town or the city is on fire. That's the map painting. They obviously only
right.
built the
Mm.
one building that they needed, but the entire thing that you see is a map painting around it. So it was just amazing to me because the cost, the artistry, forget about the cost, the artistry and the time it takes to paint those paintings to a quality that you can't distinguish it from the rest of the set
Sure.
was just not something I thought Doctor Who had the time for back then.
Yeah, no,
Certainly
no,
not the
absolutely.
60s, you know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the 80s even still is a stretch for me. But the fact that they did it and they pulled it off as effectively to where like you and I both had no idea which ones in Star Wars were matte paintings, right?
Yeah,
I think that's incredible.
yeah, I agree. James, honorable mention.
Well, to be fair, I already given you two. I think it's down to you to do an
That's
honorable
right,
mention.
Christian.
Oh, well, um, I don't know. Because I mean I do have one, but it feels almost obvious because of where it sits within Doctor Who and almost unfair against all the other stuff. And I've also already done two from the 80s. So I want to go, and I was going to say a lot of Remembrance of the Daleks, but um because it is they did do such a good job with it. I
You're pissing me off
Why?
because I was going to go for the Dalek transmat
You've
in
literally just said you
Remembrance
don't
of the
want to
Oh
Daleks.
play
yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
So
Well, I thought I'd give you a chance. I didn't think that you would. Yeah, no, I
so
agree. I agree. Remembrance has got some really good stuff in there.
yeah, it does. So
It does,
I
yeah.
so I was trying to kind of find something, but I do kind of find myself just going back to Inferno, and I don't know if there's a single good special effect in Inferno, but there is a general application of consistency with Inferno, which creates goes towards the world building, and I think all John Pertwee stretching his face and getting drawn through and all that stuff. There's a bit of humor to that maybe perhaps, but I think
No,
it
that's
just
good.
Yeah, well, it is, but
Yeah.
what there is a consistency across it all. It is a piece, there is world building in there. You've got the gloop, you've got you've got the beards and the green faces, and then the beards and the
Yeah.
primordial
And the eye
metamorphosis and
patch.
that, and the eye patch. And you've also got the heat effect as well, which increases as
Yes.
certainly the final episode progresses. So I think it's not a single special effect, but I think Inferno holds together as relying quite a bit on special effects, but none of them really. I like the Primord, so I'm not going to say they're letting it down. I know they're a
Yeah.
little bit. They are a kind of monster with a weak element to it, but I do have a lot of love for Inferno, and I think a lot of that is down to the effects work throughout it.
Well, okay. So there's just perhaps another final category is ones where it's not about specific, but it's like the consistency to world building. So
Hmm.
I would
Right.
say like, and we've talked about it before, Death to the Daleks, I think has nothing that stands out, but
Hmm.
consistently its effects throughout. To me, I think some really good world building. I mean, the city itself is actually quite good.
Yeah.
The low camera shots of it make it actually make the model look quite large. The routes, just the whole feel of it feels very contained, and nothing lets it down. Nothing raises it to anything amazing, but nothing lets it down.
It's a
So
bit
I'd
like Underworld in that respect, isn't it? Because you can see the ambition as well.
yeah, but I'd say the ambition in Death of the Daleks kind of pulls off.
The
It maybe
execution's better. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't think it's doing quite the risks that Underworld is doing, but yeah, you're right. I would say that and Seeds of Death, I still think is a consistent world building throughout there where there's no effects in there that I can think of. Even the rocket effects, nothing lets it down, and that's a very consistent world building through that story as well. Um, but
You
yeah,
know, it's weird. I was going to first of all, I agree with all of that. Everything that Inferno does is in aid of telling that story. Maybe
mm,
there's a little bit of dodgy CSO outside the garage door,
mhm,
maybe fine, but everything just really told that story along. The second they come running out of there and you see that, like you said, that heat effect, I love that. That
Yeah.
looks so cool. Like it really sells that moment. I was going to go kind of on a sort of opposite end of the spectrum too, which is kind of like, I suppose, almost a cheap and cheerful one, but it was basically using the episode to their advantage, which is one of my favorites, which is the Santaran experiment. Okay,
mm,
they built a robot, they built tracks or wood planks for it to ride around on. They weren't sure that it sold very well. I think it's amazing. I love that robot. Yes, there's the reverse footage for when they're getting coiled in, but it works, and you have when the Centaur's head deflates. Okay, but you were talking about this a little bit earlier, James, I think, where the laser guns just have this light up effect and a sound effect, and then somebody
mm,
gets hit and they drop. They don't go out of their way to try and put in these laser blasts, and it's not really needed. And in fact,
Mm.
real laser guns wouldn't have a laser blast effect.
Well, you
And
don't
I
see a
and I
bullet, do you? So yeah. Mm.
exactly right. It's a fantastic point. But everything in that story works, and I think to its credit, it doesn't have any studio footage. It's all location. Um, the Sontaran ship is great as well. I think that really sells. There's nothing in that story that realistically that I would change in any way. I think everything in it is great. Even Steyer with he doesn't have the most articulate mouth as the previous version has, but it works great the way the actor plays it in that mask with that tongue sticking out every once in a while. It really works well. And then they build that little and it's just a TV inside of a shell, but they build that
Mm.
communication device so Steyer can talk with the marshal. Everything in that story, I go back to that story so much. I watch that one so much. I love that two-parter. And they're just simple effects that they use. They didn't overreach, they didn't go out of their way. Even the teleport in effect, it's exactly what we were talking about in the beginning of this, but it's
Mm.
used to perfect effect for the transmat. I love it. I love
do
that
do
circle
you
of the things as well. So great.
do you and this is a very personal question that as middle-aged men you might not want to admit to. Um, do you ever try and justify these effects in your head? So, like as you said, like the doors to the garage in Inferno, you can say, well, it's part of the temporal field that the console is creating. It creates
Huh.
a weird sort of it feels very, you step out, it's almost like a haze. Do you ever do that with any of these? Do you ever try and sort of rationalize it in a sort of in world?
It's so weird you should say that.
Oh,
I want to say yes. I'm sure I did, but there's one that I literally did today. I told you I was watching The Three Doctors, and it's not a special effect thing though. It is a story thing. I watching it, they're like, oh, crap's going down on Earth. We need to help the doctor. Why don't we bring in one of his older ones, and you bring in Patrick Troughton. And as I'm watching it, and they bring in William Hartnell, I'm thinking, well, hold on a second. This is a bit weird. I can understand that they know where Patrick Troughton is because at the end of the War Games, he called them for help. If you believe in the season 6B theory, then they know exactly where he is. They can bring him in, right? But how do they know where William Hartnell is? Like it was a big deal that Patrick Troughton exposed himself to the Time Lords, got himself in trouble, and got exiled. And I was like, how, why would they shouldn't have brought in the first Doctor. They shouldn't even know where he is out there. And then I started rationalizing it. Oh, maybe the Time Lords always knew where the Doctor was. And by the time of the War Games, they were like, look, we're just sick of you by now. You're gone. We're exiling you to Earth. We'll always know where you are. We're done. So I did it for a story there. I know 100% I've done it for visual effects, but I literally just did it for a story today. I rationalized a way that it made sense that they knew where the first Doctor was.
Oh, the way I'd rationalize it is exactly in a different way, but along the same point. They bring in the second Doctor because they know where he is, and once they've got the second Doctor, they can run like a sort of like a temporal genetic legacy back and trace the timeline through him to a point earlier and pull the first Doctor. But they couldn't have done it the other way round because they needed the Troughton. That's another way of looking at it. It's all rubbish.
That's good. No, that's good. I mean, if you think about it too, the second Doctor learns so much about the third Doctor's life, right? And obviously, we have to rely on the old theory that, when they disappear, only the current Doctor will remember those events. But you have the other aspect. If the season 6B theory is real, then the the second Doctor presumably went and did a lot of work for the Time Lords, and then they went, okay, we're going to erase your memory. We're going to exile you. You're going to think you went from your trial to being exiled on Earth. They could just as well have said, yeah, while we've got you here, we're probably going to need your first self. Give us a location you were at one point, what year, what date, kind of thing. They could have even just pinpoint it down for me, So any of those explanations work in the end.
Well, he's quite weak as well, isn't he? So Stephen Moffat could have written it into Twice Upon a Time. Is it Twice Upon a Time?
Yeah.
The final.
Yeah, no, you're there, but he could have written. What do you mean?
He could have just written a moment and I've just bumped into some time. I've just seen the future or whatever.
Because in the script it is meant to be near the end of his first regeneration, isn't it? The five Doctors.
He's supposed to be at the 10th planet, yeah.
But it doesn't say the 10th planet in the script. I think it says he's nearing the end of his regeneration when he's picked up, or in the book somewhere where it suggests that the Richard Hurdnell is near the end of
the five Doctors.
In the five Doctors.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? And how? Yeah, I think so. But not that it makes any sense because he's walking through a garden, which.
Yes. So anyway, well, listen, this is a good point for us to move on from this podcast, and I'd really like to know if you have any particular favorite and also less than favorite special effects in classic Doctor Who. Do let us know, because I think this is a topic we can come back to in the future. There's so many. I mean, we've touched on probably, at a stretch, 15 episodes. There's so many more we could have referred to. So do let us know what you think about all of those that we've discussed, and any other favorites and hated ones, special effects that you have.
And bear in mind, whatever you are thinking after this podcast ends, Christian will have told us. He'll have mentioned it to us right before you've thought of it, because he does that sort of shit.
Yeah. We'll be back next time. Until then, it's goodbye from us.